Welcome to 3 Point Cyber, a podcast about cybersecurity topics and events for the layperson. The ideas, opinions, and discussions of this podcast are those of the host, co-host, and guest and do not necessarily represent the views of their respective employers or affiliates. Recording and propagation of this podcast is highly encouraged as long as an acknowledgement is given to the ownership. Music and graphics used in the podcast and promotional materials cannot be used in other events not tied to the podcast without the express written consent from Alpha Omega Advisors. I'd like to think episode 11 is a lot of episodes under my belt, but I'm quickly learning it's not. And it seems like I'm going to have to go through about another 150 to really understand what I'm doing here. So,
got a couple weeks.
Yep, welcome to 3 Point Cyber, and we are excited to have our guest on today. I can't even get across how much that I appreciate this person coming on. So, Andrew, it's been 11 episodes. I'm certainly learning some new things, which is part of our banter back and forth is we never stop learning in this field, even if it just means going back and forth with each other with topics. So what's happened with you since the last episode?
Well, I watched Top Gun Maverick this weekend.
Good. That's a good one. We
have you
did
seen
too.
it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
I am not ashamed to say there were a few moments that, tugged at the old heartstrings, but I think it may have been me just being sad, realizing how old I'm getting.
Yeah, we've already brought this up once. We don't talk about age, specifically because I know I'm the older one here. So we're not going to talk a whole lot about age right now.
Okay.
I really, what I intend on doing with my age is kind of, hopefully I can bring out a little bit of my experience that I've gained over these years and use them for positive. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I'm with you. I saw the Top Gun Maverick too. And quite frankly, as much as I liked the first one, I think I like this one better. I thought this was excellently done.
Yeah, well, my girlfriend and I watched, the original the next night just to, compare. And I would say, I agree. The second one, you can't, the original is the original, but the second was definitely worth going to see.
Yeah.
And we're not being paid to say this.
No, we're not. In fact, we probably ought to just go ahead and get with the movie studio and see if we can't get some money out of this one. Because, all the tens and tens of people that are listening to me, we should be making some money off that plug, right?
Yeah,
so
except they've all probably seen it. So
yeah. So today on this episode, I have a people hacker that is coming on. And I just am so excited about this because I met her in Atlanta a few years ago. And what I'm saying about that is just the way she went about creating this and doing what she's doing has just been nothing short of phenomenal. And it was just very, it's not just great to understand what she's doing and how she's doing it, but it's fun listen. It is just really entertaining to even listen to what she's got going. Jenny Radcliffe is a renowned social engineer. Now, a lot of people are wondering what social engineering is, and I think more and more people are starting to understand it because it is a big part of cybersecurity. Social engineering, in fact, I'm not even going to get into that definition yet. That's one of the questions I'm going to have for her when she comes on. So she's going to be put on the spot and have to answer a definition question. She is world-renowned. She's known a lot of countries. And now let's go to the award side because I'm so taken aback by the awards she's been getting. She's recognized as one of the top 25 women in cyber in 2020 by IT Security Guru. She's also known as one of the top 50 women of influence in cyber in 2019 and won the most educational security blog of 2020. So she's been very busy the last couple of years, and I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with the COVID situation and having to get pretty much stuck inside and you're behind a computer. So that could be why she's really been busy on the computer here for the last couple of years. She also is the host of an award-winning podcast called The Human Factor, where she interviews industry leaders, other bloggers and experts, and fellow social engineers and con artists. In fact, even more than that, because I was listening to one just before we get on here, where she was interviewing a friend of hers as a professional gambler. And I really liked that. That's a great podcast. So Jenny's got a lot more experience at podcasting than I do. 181st episode was just released, so I've got a little ways to catch up to her. And releasing one every 2 weeks is going to take me a little bit of time to catch up to 181 podcasts. So, Andrew, I'm really excited about bringing Jenny on. So, just right after this, we're gonna get started.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if she knows this, but it sounds like she's got a lot of information about herself on the net. So, if I were her, I'd be careful to not be social engineered.
That's true. Yeah. I think she would probably understand when she's being social engineered. Well, we're back, and it's time to bring my guest on, and it's just so exciting to bring her on here. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm excited about some of the discussions we're getting ready to happen, and hopefully we can provide some education to the listeners, and that this podcast is going to be out there for a while, and that people are going to take something from this, because we do have a lot going on in cyber world. And one of the things that I've been amazed at is how you got started. We're not going to say how many years ago, because we've already mentioned one, so we're not going to talk about age here. But it's getting started. I think it's phenomenal that your timing has been really perfect in how cyber has actually taken off in the last decade, and how much this ties into the cyber world itself. And marrying physical and cyber together is something that is really starting to close the gap in industry right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised. I remember the first talk I did in London was for a cyber audience. I thought these technical people are not going to care about what I've got to say. I mean, why would technical people, computer people, which is what normal people see hackers and people who are in the industry as, why would they care about the human side of it, And I was actually quite defensive about the role that human beings and people played in cybersecurity. But it's been embraced, and I think it's recognized, and I think that's part of why I come on shows like this, and people ask me on shows like this, is because it's so important that we see the human side. So
it is, and in so many ways, because one of the things that I've noticed here lately is, and it's been a common theme throughout my field and the cyber field for a long time, and that people are the weakest link in security. But I've also, in the last probably 12 months, I've seen, I don't know, maybe this movement of cyber professionals that are starting to get upset at that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this, the weakest link is a term that people understand, right? So in the industry and outside of the industry, they understand that term. It almost immediately gets people in the right kind of frame of mind to understand that people are part of it and that there are vulnerabilities. What I do is I say, well, we can be weak, we can be a weak link, but so can anything. But being informed reinforces it and helps us defend against these attacks that focus on the humans and not the technical side. And that's one of the things that people outside of the industry, I think, need to hear as many times as we can say it, is that for as many attacks that come through the cyber side, through code and the cloud and everything else, that seems quite difficult to get our hands on. It's quite ephemeral. But for all of those attacks, really, there's usually someone who's clicking on a link, opening an attachment, or giving away some detail that they shouldn't. And that's why it's important. So I think, we talk about the weakest link as if it's a point of controversy, but actually, really, it just gets people on topic, and then we can talk about why that doesn't need to be the case after that. And
I'm glad you brought it up that way, because I'm guilty in this in my past and in the roles that I've been in over here in the United States. In case you didn't know and you can't hear it by her accent, she is in the UK, which we automatically think. In fact, our last gentleman on our episode is Mr. Eddie Doyle. I don't know if you've met Ed or not, but he is also from the UK. And
so it makes me laugh when I speak to people in the US, because they go, he's from England as well. Do you know him? No.
Yeah, I know. It's like...
I'm from the north of England.
We have this...
Eddie sounds to me like he's from the south of England.
And I have the same problem with, when people around here in the United States know I'm from Florida, they want to know if I know the Florida guy. The Florida man. The Florida man is a big running joke here of news articles. Florida man does this, Florida man does that.
See, I could say I was in Florida just recently. I was in Bonita Springs just recently.
Nice. I hope
Lots
it was...
of things that will kill you in Florida.
There is. It's really funny, because just last week, my son was on his way home the other night, and he called me and said, Dad, can you come out here on this road and help me do something? And I said, what do you need? And he sent me a picture, and it was a 6-foot alligator that was on the road. and he was afraid someone was going to come around the corner and have an accident and run over it. So, you know, by the time I got there,
I didn't expect there to be boars, and there's wild boars, and
there is a lot of wildlife in Florida.
You guys deal with.
Yes.
Absolutely. We don't have that so much in England. But anyway.
Yeah, and before we really get even started deeper into all this, Andrew, is there anything you've been really quiet, and I know you're there, unless you're sleeping again.
I'm just enjoying listening to the sound of your voice. It's amazing.
Andrew and I'm not meaning to interrupt here again, but Andrew and I we already know that when we have someone on from the UK, we're already at a higher intelligence level, because just listening to you, it just makes it, I don't know what it does, but it just makes it sound so much better with that accent. I told him,
I will
really
absolutely let you run with that. That's fine.
Well, it's like I told him, I said, what we really need to ask is, who has the accent here? Do you think we have one, or do we think you have one?
Oh, well, for me, you guys have quite a soft accent. I mean, the US is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I travel all over the States, and there's different accents everywhere. And the UK is the same, but we're tiny. I mean, there's people in the US who have, gardens bigger than the UK.
But it's funny. That was one of the things when early on in my career, I was going up north, and I'm from like Indiana, South Indiana, which does not have the big long draw like Southern Alabama or Georgia does, but it still has that draw. And I would go up into the Boston area, and people just wanted to know where I was from, because I sounded like a backwoods hick. And so it was a tough one. I had to work a long time of getting rid of that accent. Pretty fun.
Mine is not as strong when I'm on these podcasts in the States or Europe or outside of the UK, because I've had to close the accent down a little bit, or you wouldn't understand anything I said.
But I love it. I love it.
If I was to switch to my strong accent, you probably wouldn't understand anything I said.
So, Andrew, go ahead now. You were going to have a question.
Yeah. So, and I know you're going to get into what you do here to more detail, but just quickly, from what I understand, you at least one of the things you do is you break into places to test security systems. So my first question for you is, how many times did the glasses and mustache disguise actually work for you?
Okay, so let me clarify a little bit, and then I'll answer that question. So, as Dave said, I'm a social engineer, and what that means is that social engineers manipulate people to extract information or gain access to areas that we shouldn't have access to. So unauthorized areas or information or data or physical premises. And to do that, we use psychology, influence, persuasion, that type of thing. And within that, I have two specialisms. So my first specialism is the psychology of cons, scams, and I suppose you'd say hustle.
Hustle, yeah.
It's all those kind of schemes that we run. Fraud, really, but ethically done. So we do that to the point of harm so that we can educate. And I will put cons together for clients, and we will go in and we will replicate a criminal attack. But the thing that everyone always wants to talk to me about is my other specialism, which is physical infiltration, which basically means I'm hired by clients, whether that be government organizations, corporate entities, high net worth individuals, etc., to physically bypass their security systems, to get into the building, so into their secure areas, and take it from there. So they might give me a target or something like that. So that's really the job, that I do. And tell me the question again. What was I've explained that really well, and now I forget.
That sounds like an incredible job to have.
Everyone say, do you know what? I always say this: it's all fun and games till you fall off a roof. Everyone thinks my job's the most fun in the world, and it's like James Bond, and it's this and it's that. Yeah, until you fall off, right? Because it can be quite. You're working at height. We do a lot of height work, and it can be quite dangerous. So.
Well, the movies make it look so easy.
Yeah, but it's not that.
No, I was looking at your the video that you had posted on YouTube from your website, and I just wanted it was I think a TED Talk, and you had a graphic, with the glasses and the mustache. Which,
that was it.
But I guess they to say that to be funny, but overall, do disguises actually come into play at all?
No, and for me, so I'm very old school. So there are plenty of people who do my kind of job, but they use a lot more tech. But I never had the tech, so I always worked with, brains and people and things. And one of the things that becomes very clear when you're trying to be natural inside a place you're not supposed to be is that any kind of disguise or pretext or lie is difficult to maintain. So we try and be very simple. We go with what we have. If you wear a wig, you're the person in a wig. I mean, people go, well, look, there's someone in a wig. I mean, to disguise yourself well is quite difficult. Now, to change your appearance isn't so difficult. So I can put my hair back, or I can put glasses on and off, or I can change. I have jackets and hoodies that are reversible. But generally speaking, disguises take you off task. And what you become more concerned about is maintaining the disguise and the credibility of the disguise than achieving the goal that you're there to achieve. So to be professional, we try, I tend to instruct my crew, certainly me particularly, not to, wear the false moustache and everything else.
That's probably wise. I would say that that is wise. And to kind of follow up with that, would you say, so you're talking about the social engineering aspect of it.
Sure.
And I'm assuming, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, so you're gaining information on people, possibly.
Right.
Are you looking for insiders to do your bidding?
So that's kind of a big topic. So essentially, to gain access to a system of building information, I never assume how we're going to do that, right? So every job is unique. But what I do is I use and I've spoken about this before, is a funnel of information. So I'll go meta environment all the way down to individuals, right? So I'll look at exactly, who we're looking at, who the client is, where they operate, what's going on in the meta environment, what politically is affecting them environmentally. I mean, very thorough, much more than a lot of people who do the job. And then I'll go to site specific. So what does the site that we're going to go into look like? What are the shifts like? Who are the security? How does it operate? Where do they go to celebrate? How do they commiserate if someone's in trouble? What do they do if someone goes wrong? Where is the power in that organisation? All these things. And then we'll do sweeps on social media and on the internet and start looking for people who are giving stuff away, who are talking about things, disgruntled people. Absolutely, we will. And we'll look at all those things, and eventually you'll funnel it down to anything from 6 to a dozen people, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more. And those will be the people that we'll do a thorough investigation on. And the reason for that is that sooner or later it's like building a jigsaw puzzle. You're putting together all the pieces of this profile of the client, and eventually the way in will become obvious. And I always say, if we can't see it, if it's not obvious that this is how we're going to approach, then we've not done enough research. We have to do more. Because it just presents itself, this will be a good way of doing it. There might be redundancies, layoffs, and someone's really annoyed about that, and so we can get them talking. There might be a site move. They're changing location, so we'll look at that. There might be a problem with the landlord. There might be a bad neighbour. But whatever it is, will, when you've done enough research, present itself. And then from that, we'll work out the approach, which may be centred on one person, may be centred on a lot of people. We might not even target an individual, but we will know by the time we get on that site and we approach you, I will know your company as well as any outsider could know them, and probably a lot better. Wow. So that once we're on site, we're very comfortable with tactical adaptation.
And that's where I think the draw has been into the cyber side of things, because you have to do that in the cyber world to get in, to understand people's networks and computers. And instead of the building, now you're talking about how do you get into the network. So you're going to talk to those right people. Yeah. And again, I think your timing and all this, when you started your career, I'm quite positive several years back when you started doing all this, you had no idea where it was going to lead into the cyber side.
No, and I mean, I never gave it the name social engineering. I saw that was what people were calling it. Actually, in the US, far more advanced than the UK, I think. But for me, I was very surprised when cyber became the natural home for my skills. I never thought my skills would find a home really anywhere. And I was very cautious for a long time about telling anyone what I did, because who would not just believe it? Because people still don't believe me now if they don't know me. I meet people now and they're like, you don't look like James Bond, But how could it be legitimate to formulate an attack on a legitimate company or a business or an individual with the purposes of protecting protecting them. And of course, because I wasn't technical, I didn't realize that cyber were doing the same with red teams, with penetration tests. I just didn't know that that was a thing. So it was amazing and lovely to kind of meet the cyber community and have people within that say, oh no, we absolutely get what you do. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a revelation to me that there were people out there who understood the value of these tests, because I was self-taught with a few bit of help here and there.
Exactly.
I was never in that industry.
Well, and that's why it's so important. And that's why we try to bring this out on this podcast, is try to get that as an understanding of, because I know there's probably going to be some listeners here that still don't quite understand why you need to hack a company or why you need to hack an individual. And one of the things that we've done in past podcasts is also talk about white hat hackers and black hat hackers and why they do what they do, where hacking is really probably the most efficient way to ever tear something down, to understand how it works and understand the vulnerabilities to it so you can fix the vulnerabilities and help mitigate threats that might be against it. And you're doing the same thing against physical access to a location as the pretty much the white hat hackers are doing onto a network or a computer. They're just looking for the vulnerability so it can be mitigated.
So I always say, if you want to protect your home from burglary, you want a burglar to help you. Mm-hmm. And I do the physical side of that, but I also do what we call a psychological pen test. And that's where things get really sort of dark, because I can look at someone and look at really how someone with malicious intent could try and break that person psychologically. And that's why what we do is so important, because it's difficult to protect against that. But what is the thing that you protect? What is the thing that you're vulnerable about? And we all have family and things that we want to protect, but like, how exactly could someone use that to formulate a scam, to formulate an attack, to get you to crumble? And that's really what the clients pay me for. I often get approached by individuals. We don't really work with individuals. We work with corporate and high net worth, because it's expensive, it's time consuming, which is why I do such a lot free, basically, and put a lot of interviews and things out there as well. But essentially, that's what we're doing. To catch a thief, you set a thief, and that's really what we do.
Right. And I like that, because the biggest thing that I've heard you, even as you've been maturing more of your company and what you're doing, I heard you on one podcast here recently talking about what you may be doing in the future, and part of that is how to pass this along to someone that can take it, that can continue with it. And part of that is the education side of the house. And I think that's the biggest part of why you do what you do, is to provide that training and the education to the recipients, to your clients. And you mentioned how to protect your family. One of the best things you can do is have the discussion with family members. You can't sit there and go over every possible scenario of anything that could possibly go wrong, but what you can do is give them certain pieces of information that help them recognize when they're being scammed or they're being, social engineered. So I guess my question for you on that one is, what do you believe is the most common method or attack method on an individual to even know that they might be, someone might be after them for valuable information that could be launched against them sometime, against them or even their own company in the future?
Oh, so this is such a great question, because this is so important. And I'm asked about this all the time. I'm asked about things like deep fakes. Oh God, deep fakes. They're so convincing. How will you know it's fake? Well, anything is fake with red flags, and these are your red flags. The first thing is someone, no matter how this is, whether it's on the phone, whether it's on email, on text, via social media, or even in person, is that person giving you some content, some message that triggers emotion? So are we getting angry? Are we getting scared? Are we hopeful of romantic love or a win, a lottery win or something? Anytime our emotions are elevated, our decision-making capacity is low. So the first thing is does this make me feel emotional? Secondly, are they pushing me for a decision quickly? Because what we will always try and do is when we're doing ethical con artistry to the point of harm, we'll get that person to feel some emotion, and then we'll get them to want to take an action really, really quickly. Because if I give you time to think, reason's going to kick in, and you might not do what I want you to do. So what a con artist will do, a social engineer, a fraudster, a scammer, will give you a scenario that makes you emotional. There'll be an easy way out. So click on the link, give me the information, pay this small fine, whatever. But you need to do it quickly. If you wait, it gets worse. And then there's always that call to action. So at any point, a con artist, a criminal, needs the victim, the mark, to do something. So you've got to take action. So emotion, urgency, action. And then the fourth one really is money, you know, and it's difficult because we all talk about money all the time, banks, in businesses, the finance department, whatever. But if those four things or any couple of them are present, that's the sign of a scam. And what I say is, even if it's someone you know, even if you were in your kitchen this evening and you're a member of your family, your partner, your wife, your husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, comes in, gives you a message that makes you emotional, needs some cash quickly, you've got to say, this is strange. What's going on? Why are you asking me this? And that's it. Those are the ways that, because that's how a con is formed.
Yeah.
We need the mark to do something. We need them to do it quickly. And there'll be an emotional message of some kind that will be the prompt to action.
You know what?
Sounds
You,
like
yeah, you know what you just described was high pressure marketing.
Yeah.
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 And it's exactly what is applied. It's applied in sales. It's applied in real estate sometimes. But at the end of the day, that's how those are the elements of most cons.
Yeah, and I like those four
so if
elements.
we're suspicious about those, if we're suspicious about those four red flags, and
Yeah.
stop and think before we act, that would save a lot.
Yeah, and quite the opposite side of that, even with social engineering, is taking advantage of what I call is every human being's need to help out. It's their compassion side of the human being. You can get a lot of information out of someone if they feel like they're helping you with something.
And that's very carefully curated. So, you know, it can just be a lot, like I say, tactical adaptation. A lot of what we do is on the fly, and we will, you know, I will mark someone within a business and say, okay, that person's going to be keen to help me because my hands are full, or because they seem like the type of person who's eager to chat, or something like that. But the bottom line is we all have these human vulnerabilities that are buttons that can be pushed by someone with malintent. Most of the time, when we interact socially, it just lubricates our lives. You know, it's just, we're social beings. We live in society. We don't live on our own. So it kind of just works to keep all the wheels grinding on, and we keep going. But what criminals and malicious people will do is they'll look at things like people's willingness to help, people's politeness, people's sympathy, people's empathy, and they will play on those triggers to get what they want. And really what my job is, and what my work has been, is to try and expose that can be exploited, and then tell people to live their lives quite happily. Because you're forewarned is forearmed a little bit.
Right.
The problem is that most people don't realise that this is a thing, and that most hacks and breaches and crimes really involve that human element. And so that's really what I try and publicise.
And that go back to our first discussion here of humans being the weakest link. As much as I don't like to bring that into the discussion, because I think it ends up being a negative connotation to people, and sometimes people take offense to that. But I do understand why weakest link idea has come along, because it usually always is involving some decision or some action that a human has taken that has caused a cyber incident. And I think that's where it really comes from.
I think the thing is this, it's humans we get tired, we get emotional, we make mistakes. And when that thing happens, occasionally someone will take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I always say when I speak about these things is that humans are also our best chance against human attacks. Mm. Because although automation and technical defenses do the heavy lifting in terms of our defense against these things, they filter out malware, and they filter out computer viruses and lots of other things. Without the humans kind of using common sense and education and awareness to filter what gets through, organizations, people, families, identities would be naked. So what we have to do is we have to say the machinery, the computing does the heavy lifting and narrows it down so that we're not trying to analyze 2,000 things a day, but only analyzing 20. And some of that 20 will get past. But if someone kind of knows what to look for and is aware of it, then we've done all we can, and that's all we can hope to do. You can't hope to stop everything. It's not possible.
So, you got me thinking here. I'm getting ready to start a new position here soon, another CISO for another organization. I'm really looking forward to getting involved in that. but I've also, and this is going to go back and the keep on learning idea. You're always in a learning process. You just convinced me to change my idea about this human is the weakest link thing. I think what we really need to be focusing now on, and you said it perfectly, and I absolutely love it, so I'm going to take it from you, and that is, instead of saying humans are the weakest link, I'm now going to go out there and I'm going to start using humans are our best defense.
Yeah.
And
I say we're not the weakest link and we're not the best defense. We're just human.
Right.
Sometimes we defend well, sometimes we make mistakes. Bottom line is, without us there's no extra layer.
Right.
Right.
Very good.
So we're a good defense. And you know, I think the problem is if we say weakest or we say best, it makes everything very binary, right? It's all or nothing. And all social engineering, all security is nuanced. It's context specific. So we say to people, look, you're going to make mistakes occasionally. Sometimes things get through. But if we can educate you, if you can keep this in mind, then you're a good defense for you and for the company, by definition.
Right. Okay. I'll revise that a little bit, but I'll have to think about it and how to best revise it. Now, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are probably going to understand, well, how did she ever get involved in all this? And because of time, I'm actually not going to get into that because I'm sure that's a question you're asked every time you're interviewed is why do you get in? How did you get into it? Why did you get into it? There's a lot of great podcasts out there and interviews on Jenny for how she did that. And I encourage the listeners to go out and Google that information because there's some fascinating stories that she's had to say. So here's what I'm going to try to grab something out of you that I haven't heard anybody ask you before. So this first one here, of all of your exploits and all of your attempts at doing all of this, I've got to know, it just occurred to me a little while ago too, like I've never heard her ask this question, been asked this question. I have never heard her answer this question. So in those times, is there one situation where you were actually arrested for what you did?
So I have been asked that and I never answer it. I've been stopped. I've been stopped.
Okay.
I've been stopped and released, stopped and detained, but I never answer. Because I always say, what do you mean exactly by arrest?
Well, you answered you answered the question. Yeah, I'm not talking about hauled off to jail or anything like that. I'm talking about the authorities coming in and you having to explain what was going on. And so, yeah, okay. I think that's. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna break into somewhere at some point, the odds are you're gonna get caught. So,
but there are degrees of that.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yeah. Which is always the good get out of jail free card that you should always have before you go into something like this. And again, I want, just for the listener's sake, as we're talking about this, Jenny is not a bad actor here. She is someone that's doing this for the positive side of learning how to get into places so those places can understand where their weak link is in security. And that's the whole point of all this. So I want to be very clear that I don't have a bad actor here on my show. Okay.
Do you know, people say to me all the time, Dave, right? They say, "Oh, you're doing it now. Are you hacking me now? Are you psychologically hacking me? Are you gonna break into the building?" And I always say, "Are you paying me to hack you?" And they say no. I say, "Well, then I'm not hacking you. Like it costs a lot of money for me to hack you, and you would really know that you were spending that money.
Yeah.
And if you're not spending it, it ain't happening."
I'm curious as to whether outside of, your exploits, if you've been arrested otherwise.
Now, I know she's not going to answer that question.
Curiosity is a wonderful quality.
That's funny.
I encourage it.
So the other question with all of this stuff, is there anything recently that surprised you about people?
That surprised me about people?
Yeah, I mean, after you've been through all of this, I mean, you know how human behavior is. You know what you've seen, and I'm sure early in your career, you were surprised that you were able to do what you were to do with some places and some people. But more recently, as you do this, anything recently that has just like that just really I wasn't expecting that person just really surprised me.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, oh God. I mean, my job covers some very serious situations and also some very frivolous situations as well. I think the best answer I can give you to that is the thing that surprises me every day when I do my job is that I will spend a lot of time researching a target, looking at the people within the target, looking at the best psychological ways we can get to them, looking at physical security, looking at a million things, right? And it's a really academic, professional exercise. But what always surprises me is that when we present the results or when I do some training within a business, is how evil some of the people within the business are. So if I say to them, look, we thought we'd do this is how we got in. How would you have done it, right? Because we always ask the employees of our clients, because they always know the shortcut. So how would you get in? And some of the things they say is just shockingly evil. And it's always from someone who you'd never expect. Mm. So like I was talking about getting into a secure facility with a little team, and we were talking about what we did, which was ingenious and it was clever, and I love that one. But we asked them, well, how would you get in? And there was this lady, and she was retired. She'd been called out of retirement to come in and discuss with the team. She was coming in to reinforce something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was there. She'd been brought out of retirement. Delightful lady of older years in, a little pink fluffy cardigan, and just a sweetheart. And I said, how would you get in? Let's call her Doris. How would you get in, Doris? And she went straight to killing someone and stealing their uniform. I mean, straight there. I would kill them and steal their uniform. Not she would tie them up or she would buy a uniform off Amazon or something or eBay. No, straight to murder. And that's what I am always and continually surprised by the extent that normal employees have already thought about and are prepared to enact ways of of stealing from their company.
I would be.
Or she was scared. She was scared that would happen to her one of these days.
Must have been.
They've already planned it. They've already worked it out. They are far more evil than me or my.
How do you ethically do that one?
What, Doris? You would go straight there. Yeah, absolutely. And no kind of sense of humour to it. No, just absolutely straight down the middle. I would shoot someone and steal their uniform. So I mean, it's that type of thing that continually surprises me.
So, Jenny, what's next for you?
Oh, okay. Well, that's always an interesting question. I have a book will be out next year.
Oh, so, great.
I've been commissioned to write an autobiography. That is now finished and in the pre-release stage with a major publisher. So that will be out next year. And that is something that they've asked me to write, how I started and some of my motivation. So that's going to be huge next year. And I also am this year's Hall of Fame inductee in the UK.
I was going to bring that up. That's InfoSec Magazine's.
At InfoSec Europe, which is the biggest event in Europe, I think.
Yeah.
So
and congratulations for that.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'm very proud of that because that's social engineering. That's the human side of cyber being acknowledged. It's not just me. Mm-hmm. And I am speaking, I'm in the States at least 6 times before Christmas. I'm doing a lot of talks in America. I love coming over there and seeing you guys and all over Europe as well. So it's busy. I would like to. I mean, I said a couple of years ago, I was always thinking about retiring and having kind of a quiet life, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, we'll see you on the road somewhere.
I could talk a little bit about that one because I kind of went into semi-retirement this past year, and I found that I was a little more busy in semi-retirement than I was actually working full-time.
I mean, exactly. You'll find me at a conference or in an airport lounge, usually drinking something strong and watching you.
Yeah, so I cannot wait. I'm going to be one of your first buyers of your book.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will let you know when it's out.
You have to do that, please. But I'm going to ask this question. I know no one has probably ever asked this question to you now.
Okay.
Who do you want to play you when they make the movie?
Now, you see,
I've got someone in mind that I think would be really good, but I want to hear what you'd have to say about that one.
Well, I won't say a name, but it has to be an English actress who can do a Scouse accent, which is a Liverpool accent.
Well, you know that any good actress could do that.
I'm very discerning about that. I don't know if they can.
Well, okay.
Yeah, no, I think English actors and actresses can do great American accents, but not vice versa for some reason.
I think it's difficult because there's so many of them. But yeah, it'd have to be someone who did a very good Liverpool accent.
Well, then I'm not even going to mention who I thought because
no, go on. You've got.
She's not. No. She's already played in a couple of hacking movies. Well, okay, Sandra Bullock. I think she would play that role really, really well.
I mean, she's certainly, as long as she, scrubbed up well and made herself look good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how flashing would it be if some gorgeous actress did it? I mean, I don't know. We'd have to wait and see. But I think Sandra there might struggle with a Scouse accent. What do you think?
Possibly, yeah.
But we could teach her.
We
I
could.
teach her. She could come and hang out in Liverpool for a while. I'm sure by the time she left, she'd be speaking.
Well, and you would need me there to help you with that. I'm quite sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it'd be lovely to see. It'd be flashing if anyone made it. I would be endlessly flattered. But really, for as exciting as all that is, what's really more exciting for me is the extent to which social engineering is now more and more public domain, because we're in danger of actually doing some good and preventing some crime there and stopping the misery that it causes when it's done maliciously. That for me is as important and as exciting as the movie. And I know that sounds like BS.
No, I get it. I understand. This is a passion field of mine, cyber, as much as your human factor is for you. So, man, Jenny, I really appreciate this. Has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it.
It's been lovely to be on your show.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope we can do it again, and that you don't, after this book is out and the movie's released and it's big, that we don't have to, you don't forget who we are. Yeah.
I'll call you and you can talk about the book. I'll come back on and bore you all to death about the book.
Sounds great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Well, thank you.
Well, it's
been
lovely
again.
to be on. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you much. Hey, I'm wondering how much disclosure is actually going to be in this autobiography.
There is actually, that is a really good question. I'm not being asked. And the truth of it is, I'm very honest, and it's all true. I've had to change some details to protect clients and myself.
Sure. But are we going to find out how many times you've been arrested?
You'll have to buy the book.
Well, Andrew, it was a fun interview with Jenny. I really appreciated her, and I thought it was a great one. So if you haven't listened to the whole thing, I'd advise you to go back and start from the beginning of this episode. She had a lot of great information, and I just thoroughly enjoyed that back and forth with her.
Yeah, I did too. She's a great interview.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned at the beginning of that, and I thought it was really funny how... does she know she's got all this information about her out on the internet, her being a social hacker, people hacker, that she's got an awful lot of information out there. In fact, so much so, you can probably answer the question right off the bat. We even have her number.
No, well, I think everybody's got her number.
I think they do.
8675309.
8675309. That's right. So, Jenny, if you start getting phone calls, it didn't come from our podcast. It came because it's on the internet. All I got to do is go Google, what is Jenny's number? And that's what will pop up on Google.
Of course, this may be all a ruse, and everything we're saying about her on the internet is not actually her.
That's true too. It could be. She may be that good. And I'm now questioning whether or not Jenny's even her real name.
We don't know.
We don't know. So anyway, let's get to the 3 points. Andrew, if you want to get started on it, we'll finish this episode up.
The first point that I've got is that every individual or company has unique vulnerabilities, whether they know it or not, that can be hacked.
Right. Yeah. So, and her point on this, there's no such thing as an unbreachable system. No such thing as an unbreachable company, which I can correlate that right into cyber, that there is no such thing as an unbreakable or an unbreachable computer system. The best we can do in cyber, and what we try to always do, is identify our highest priority assets and then look for our most common or look for our vulnerabilities, and then we try to remediate those the best we can to help prevent the possibility of a breach occurring on those assets. So that's a really good point, that there is no unbreachable system.
I will say, God did create pencil and paper for a reason.
Even that's breachable, right? And that's by what she does. Walking into someone's house, going over to a desk, pulling out their notepad, and now I've got everything they've written down. Yeah.
That is true. So I just better go to number 2 then.
Okay, let's
I'm not going to win this.
Nope, you're not.
Yeah, so I liked, the discussion about the human, that the weakest link being humans, as
the humans are the weakest link in security.
Yeah. So what's funny to me, and I didn't say a lot during that conversation, but as I was listening to it and it being brought out, that's something that is not necessarily a helpful statement, is that, because, humans obviously are the weakest link. So when people bring that out, it's it's kind of like, well, of course they are. I mean, because we're not, technology.
Well, we're the users.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, technology is not divorced from humanity. So
Right. Well, my cat's not
always-
using my computer, but at least I don't think my cat's not using my computer. But if the cats were
Exactly.
using the computer, they'd be the weakest link. I think that's what your point's trying to get across. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I agree, and I tell you what, I have been just as guilty about that as many other cyber professionals have been in trying to blame the users as the weakest link in security. And I think it's just not knowing how to use stuff properly is really what causes the weakest links part of that. So I honestly, I'm going to go forward on not going so much as blaming the human as being the weakest link. But she also made a great point when I brought that up, and I really appreciate this thought of hers, and that humans are the key. They are actually the key to making a better defense. And that's in education and showing them how to do the right thing. So that really changed my thought. My paradigm thinking has changed on that idea. So I like that one.
I agree. And I like the term users. It reminds me of Tron.
Well, now we're going back in time again.
Yes, we are. With the whole Jenny number.
Jenny's number, right? Jenny's number. Well, let's finish it up. Point number 3.
And number 3, I think we got to bring out the red flags of being scammed that she discussed.
I agree. Yeah.
And you can take that away.
Okay. Well, yeah. So when we ask very specifically, what can a user take away from our conversation about being social engineered or potentially being hacked or having an email come through that they're trying to steal information from you? And there's always 3 common areas really that you need to pay attention to. And these are the tests. This is the test to put your email through. If you're getting something you're not sure about, this is the test to do that. The first test is the message being emotional in any way? Is it going to stir up an emotion from you? And that part of that emotion is, oh man, I've really got to do something now, which drives into the second point of that. Is there an urgency for what that email is asking you to do? Basically, she mentioned this really well. If she can get you emotionally tied to something, she can pretty much manipulate you to do whatever she needs you to do. And that's the whole point behind these email scams that happen. If they're tying you in emotionally, chances are they're going to win that battle. So those are the flags, the first 2 flags to look for. And then finally, that third flag to look for is if there's money involved in the email that comes through and they're asking you to take action immediately, 99.999% of that time, it's going to be a scam and there's going to be something wrong with it, and you should ignore it and throw it away. So that's going to wrap up our 3-point segment. Again, I want to thank Jenny for taking the time to come on us and talk with what she does. It's a fascinating field she's doing, and I'm just amazed at how the timing of what she's done and how it's now married into cyber has just been a phenomenal thing. Because everything she's done on a physical level, it's now happening in the cyber world as well. So, Andrew, thanks again for co-hosting. I definitely appreciate it.
My pleasure. And I also think we should throw in another plug for her book. I'm going to have to look for that myself.
Yes, let's not forget she's coming with an autobiography next year. And I think, if I remember correctly, when that turns into the movie, we got to be part of that. Remember, we got that on audio, right? So, Jenny, don't you forget that. We're part of that whole thing now, the movie. All right. Thanks again. Thank you for listening to 3-Point Cyber, a production from Alpha Omega Advisors. If you have questions about this episode or have a topic for discussion or a guest you would like us to have on, please email us at 3pointcyber@gmail.com. That's 3, the number 3, point, P-O-I-N-T, cyber, C-Y-B-E-R, all one word, 3pointcyber@gmail.com. We encourage you to share this podcast with others. This podcast is owned and produced by Alpha Omega Advisors. The theme song was created by music producer Andrew Van Wert in Nashville, Tennessee. This is Dave Summit, and until next time, keep on learning.